Who is the time monster, dear? Is it me? Is it you? Is it, I don't know, a bird?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
Welcome to the podcast. The Time Monster, episode 64.
Yeah.
Welcome to the 70s. What happens in it, dear?
The 70s.
Yep.
What happens?
Mm-hmm.
There's instantly a nuclear explosion. Everyone's dead. And also there's a volcano erupting. And the doctor's dying on a therapist couch, which is kind of interesting.
Mood.
And yeah. And then there's a crystal in front of him, and it's flashing, and the master's here, then he poofs away. Then we see some zoom-ins of statues, and then he wakes up from his dream. And chugs a cup of tea that Joe gives him, because he's been working on something all night. And pretty much, Joe's like, look, I talked to you about this natural disaster from last night or whatever, and you didn't even fucking listen to me. Like, what the fuck? And she's like, I was working all night preparing for the master. What the fuck do you want from me, sort of thing. And we see the master, meanwhile, holding a crystal and putting it to a machine. And then the master is a professor here, kind of. He has two lab assistants who tells him, so he's like, run some tests, you fucks. And Joe has found the islands that they were talking about, and apparently it's called Atlantis. And the doctor tells the brig to alert the world about the master, and he's like, you're fucking crazy, because you're just basing this on a dream. What the shit? And then it's something about breaking down objects into light waves to transport them. We gotta go check it out. And then Benton walks in and goes, hi, I'm on vacation now, and the brigadier laughs at him and takes him with him. And then the leader of the college is like, you're a fraud, how am I supposed to deal with you? And he's like, yeah, I'm not a professor, so let me brainwash you. And he goes, yeah, alright. And then meanwhile, the assistants are doing tests and reading numbers while the crystal hangs out in solitary confinement. And they're both worried if this doesn't work out, that they're going to lose everything. So they decide, let's just run the thing itself, or whatever. And then I thought they smooched, but they don't, because they're siblings, I think? I don't know.
Yeah, they're siblings.
I thought they smooched, and it was really weird. And I looked away for 2 seconds. Anyway. Joe's curious about the doctor's time sensory device. It looks like a penis. And it sniffs out time machines. And then it's time to test the crystal in a radiation suit while there's a man on a ladder outside. And then the sniffer works, and they're excited, and goes off. Huh, that's weird. And then we see that a salt shaker is moving from room to room in the testing lab. They're making it translate from one area to another. And then the master notices the clock bell is going really slow. He's like, those fucking idiots, and he runs off. The salt shaker has moved rooms, and the man outside sees it all. And he also sees the machine overloading, so then he falls off the ladder and dies. Meanwhile, the master runs up there and walks in on them prancing about. Joe and the doctor decide to take Bessie to try and find the weird sniffer time machine thing. And the master's still upset. So that's good, everything's great. But wait, the machine overloaded, wonder why. They were drawing power from somewhere out of time itself. But then suddenly Unit's here, and the master's like, fuck. And they also find the dead ladder guy, who isn't actually dead, apparently. Joe doesn't like this guy. She says it's doomy, and then they drive really, really fast. And she's like, no! And he's like, I don't give a fuck about you. And then a time sensor still looks like a penis, and it goes off, so now they know where to go. And they're gonna go to the demonstration, so let's listen to this lady talk about all these things. And then look, we did it. We moved this vase. And then the master shows up in a radiation suit to totally cover himself, and not at all for any other reason. And the penis goes off again. They chase after the signal while the master transfers a teacup, and everyone is astonished, but he's getting too much power.
Wow.
And then he screams about Kronos and turns the volume up to 11, and that was the episode.
He's like, wow, Kronos. Come here, Kronos. Come here,
Come here,
boy.
you.
Come here. Come here.
Yep.
Kronos.
Just like
Kronos.
that. Just
Come
like
here.
that.
Come here.
Mm-hmm.
So fun fact,
Is it?
this story initially was meant to have Daleks in it, but then, season 9 had a bit of a rumbling with writing, and this story initially was meant to be with the sort of finale with Daleks they wanted, the big finale with Daleks. But stuff happened, rewrites happened, and essentially the Daleks got taken out, but the story stayed more or less intact, which allowed them to essentially be like, well, let's just throw the Master in there then. It'll work well with the title. Because initially it was meant to be sort of a story about Daleks doing time experiments of sorts.
Yeah.
And the results of it, which is why you get sort of the out of time elements in this story in like episodes 3 and 4, etc. But I mean, the element of Daleks messing with time also came back with Day of the Daleks with the whole time paradox thing. It's a part of it also is the fact that the 70s is where people started to fill in gaps in their own knowledge, so to speak. Sort of like it was becoming more common to be like, well, school didn't tell me everything, and sort of like you had like the Penguin books coming out with information about, varying topics about the world, about history, science, mathematics, etc., classic literature. So it became sort of common to more be interested in topics that would fill the gaps, and one of those that people kind of went nuts for was, your sort of mythology, your Greek mythology, especially, and all the gods and everything. So that is kind of part of the reason why this episode also went for that slant, because after the Daleks got taken out, they were like, well, shit, how are we gonna, like, what do we do now? What do we turn this story into? And the author sort of just went, well, kind of fascinated about ancient Greece at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just do that. But yeah, what happens in the second episode, dear?
They recap a whole bunch of shit, and then we see her brother dying in the other room while the clock tower's really slow. The doctor shows up, and Joe is instantly in a trance or something, and the doctor's kind of in, like, slow-mo.
Mood.
But the doctor spots him running inside, and he gives the assistants advice to stop it. And her brother is now an old man. He's actually only 25, but he looks 80. How did he get old? And the brig goes, well, time passed, obviously, and the doctor's like, you fucking smartass.
You fucking little shit.
And they talk about how the professor's name is Greek for master, ho! And then the brother wakes up.
Thascalos is Greek for master, because the master is an extra bitch.
Yes, and then, no, he's kind of basic, honestly.
He's incredibly extra, just wait. Wait until we get to the movie where he, like, takes extra time
to
put on, like, a flowing robe. Just because he wants to be extra.
I don't want to watch a movie. And then the brother wakes up and cries about seeing Kronos, and they're like, oh my god. Then he dies again, and the doctor looks pensive and wants to see the machine. The brig is calling into unit, and it's hard to hear him, but he's in a rush, and he's like, also bring the TARDIS when you get over here. Unit has now taken over the entire area, and it's his right to take care of everything and deal with everything, and the brig wants the entire area evacuated, and let him know if the master calls. Doctor wants to see the crystal and examine it. The crystal is from Kronos, and we're dealing with time eaters. And Kronos is one of them, and he was a titan that swallowed his children, and he was the original god of war. And then also gods are real, but only kind of. Atlanteans are real, and chronovores eat time and shit. Meanwhile, the master is talking with the headmaster and saying it's alright, hypnotizes him again, and he's like, okay. Doctor isn't sure why they picked up the signal and what caused the power flux, and they're like, oh, his TARDIS is literally right fucking here. And then they switch on the machine to check, and it makes the crystal glow again, and Benton goes to pick it up, and he's like, weird, I can't pick it up, it's really heavy, it's like stuck here. And he's like, because it's not really there, it jumped through time. And then the other crystal, the real crystal, is in Atlantis. Also, we see the crystal in Atlantis, and it's glowing, and the Atlanteans are freaking out about it. Joe calls down to the doctor, and he's ready to head back and figure out what's up with the assistant. And he felt Kronos is coming back, and it scares him. He's like, oh wait, fuck, I'm old. And then the master is like ready to head back to the lab at this point, and the assistant apparently knew exactly that it was Kronos coming for him for some reason, and I don't know. The doctor's like, I don't know if I could cure you, really. So I'm sorry. And then the headmaster's like,
I'll cure you of being a bitch.
We gotta go get Benton, who's guarding the lab, away from it. And they call him and go, hey, I'm the master and I use really good voices. So, yeah, I'm the brigadier, actually. And he's like, alright, yeah, sure. And then Benton opens a window, leaves the room, sneaks around the outside of the building, and gets back in the window. So
he's a smart boy.
Yes. And then the master comes in, and he pulls his gun out, and hides, and listens to them argue, before holding them all at gunpoint. And then the master goes, look, it's the doctor, and knocks him the fuck out. And the master wants to bring forth Kronos to control the world, the universe. Meanwhile, the Atlanteans are having a religious moment while the crystal glows super hard, and the Atlantean dude teleports into the room while the master's making the crystal glow. And shit, yeah.
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 You ever just have a crystal glow?
No.
No. So, fun fact, the volcano in the first episode that you see, in the very first bit, the sort of volcano exploding, is the same footage used in The Enemy of the World, and also the same footage used from Inferno. Bet you didn't even recognize it. It kind of goes by real fast. Yeah? Any
No,
I
don't care. Anyway, continue.
Okay. So, as you kind of started talking about, but also glossed over, Doctor Who's relationship with stories and mythology takes a very wise attitude of not going, oh yeah, of course the ancient Greek gods were real, like, of course they were, like, every story is real. They sort of go on a point of, like, no, there was something, but, like, the rationalization of the people turned it into a story over time. Like, they turned it into myths because that's how they dealt with it. And so it's like, that leads to sort of episodes being made out of these stories and sort of the perversion of them over time, etc. Some of the time, the Doctor actually being involved in the story. Some of the time, even the inciting incident of the episode is the Doctor hearing a story or witnessing a play or something and then seeing himself in the fucking play or story and going, oh, fuck, what have I done? And then having to go back in time to figure out when and how he got involved, which is a really good way to do the inciting incident. But yeah, that's kind of what's going on here. Also, elephant in the room, for those of you who may remember, some of you may be saying right now, but wait, wasn't Atlantis destroyed in The Underwater Menace, one of the worst episodes ever made?
Yep.
And to that I respond, yes. So, that's actually in Atlantis' future, and, it's complicated. Atlantis' future, because in this one, obviously, I mean, Atlantis is being brought up, Atlantis is going to fucking die. Spoiler. Atlantis gets destroyed. But it's like, okay, so the second Doctor visited Atlantis' future, here, Atlantis gets destroyed, but it's a case of, like, but the island survives.
Yeah.
It's just, like, it's the first destruction. Think of it like sort of a cataclysmic event. Like, it's nearly gone, but it's awful. Like, people survive. Civilization comes back. Also, some of you astute listeners who may be watching the episodes along may have, because I'm pretty sure Dia didn't mention it, say that Azal in The Daemons also mentioned that they were partially responsible for the destruction of Atlantis. And the key word there being partially, because, you know, it's kind of interesting to point to the fact that, hey, it wasn't actually just one thing. Like, Atlantis was pretty fucking weak from everything, and that's why it fell apart constantly.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, what happens in the next episode, dear?
He's a priest, and he's like, "You're lying. No one rules Kronos." And the priest goes, Does Kronos live here? And he apparently controlled Kronos way back when, but the ability how was lost forever. But look at the seal that I wear around my neck as a priest. And he's like, oh shit, like, this is literally everything I need. And then Vinton comes in and tells the doctor about the master while the master is doing math. And then Joe shows that the assistant is aging backwards again, which means Kronos is coming finally. A Kronos bird thing is here. He's a bird. And it isn't listening to the master at all until it brings up the medallion, and then he's like, oh yeah, now you'll listen to me. And then they lock him in the crystal room until needed, and the priest is upset about it. And then there's a time barrier around the area, so it slows everybody trying to get in, basically. Kronos is back in the crystal now, and he's like, I'm gonna use this as a threat to you. Ha ha! Get fucked. And then the guy from earlier that we totally talked about in eyeliner in Atlantis is telling someone, Lord Dalius, about what he saw. And then the Lord dude is really old, and he saw people overthrow Poseidon like 500 years ago. And then he's like, what the fuck? And then they're like, look, here's the true crystal of Kronos. There's a guardian in here. Half man, half beef. Don't fuck with it. And the doctor explains that everyone got stuck in a time thing that made everyone really slow. The master is ready to move and head his way to Atlantis, but the doctor wants a bottle with a cork so he can do a cool balancing act, and he says it does things, but it doesn't work until he puts a teacup on top, and then it works. What?
You gonna mention what he did?
He, balanced some forks with a wine bottle.
Well, I mean, what the technological purpose of it? It was time flow analog, essentially technology that isn't made of actual technology, in order to counteract the time flow experiments that the master was doing.
Firstly, I wouldn't have known that in the first place. Secondly, I don't care enough to memorize that shit.
I was gonna say he literally said that.
I get that, but I don't care enough to pay attention to those parts because, again, the whole reason that this podcast is I don't like sci-fi. Anyway, the crystal's lighting up again, and the priest doesn't want to touch the crystal, but the master sabotages it back, and then he's fucked. So then Unit's heading this way, and the master has an Apple Watch that lets him see everything, and does a time thing, and makes a fucking knight show up to joust the cars and run them off the road. But then the master brings up another armor-clad dudes this time with cannons, and Gamb told me...
Roundheads.
Okay. I was gonna say, Gamb told me about them, but I wasn't gonna get into it because I didn't exactly remember what they were.
Roundheads, for those who don't know, very quickly, Oliver Cromwell's peeps. If you don't know Oliver Cromwell, just look up, I don't know, some stale bread. Essentially the same thing.
Anyway, he
was an asshole.
So the doctor's like, I need to get to my TARDIS, and they're like, alright, let's go. So everybody gets in a car and goes, and he, pulls around the fucking brig and, speeds off. And then the master calls in, a fucking World War II bomber, and it's coming in to finish the fight, and the convoy gets fucking bombed. And no one's responding to the brigadier, so that's pretty worrying.
Everyone is dead, and the bodies are burnt, Yes. Mike Yates is dead. I'll phone his mum.
Yes.
And yeah, that's the end of the episode. So, fun fact, when Kronos is first manifesting, did you see the out-of-frame dove?
Yeah.
Yes, you did, because you mentioned it. So, on the day when they were filming that, they tried various forms of fowl. They tried chickens, they tried owls, they tried seagulls, they even tried cockatoos. None of it looked right. so they just went with an out-of-focus dove instead. And their goal with the costume of Kronos was, it was a glowing costume, so they tried to put lights on it to make it glow. Doesn't really glow, and put shit tons of Vaseline on the camera in order to make it glow more, and put it out of focus more, so, people wouldn't notice. It's literally just a man in a costume flapping his arms, which is what they saw when they filmed that first scene, and were like, okay, we need to keep these scenes to a minimum.
Yeah, don't say.
Because it looks... If you have it in semi-decent quality, like DVD, it's,
bad.
It's, I'm not gonna say it's bad, but it's not believable. Because it's not bad, it's just not believable as an effect.
Then that would be a bad
effect. Which in turn
effect.
makes it hilarious, because, like, while the Master's talking to Kronos, you just see this bird on a wire flapping around inside the office room, and it's hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so, you kind of brought up yourself, when the knight in shining armor appeared and charged the cars, what you said kind of actually happened. So, Deer was like, wait, what the fuck? Why are they worried about it? Like, he clearly wouldn't win. Like, he'd get fucked up. Like, yeah, one of the cars would get fucked up, but, like, they would still win. It's like, well, they don't want to hurt civilians, first of all. And secondly, that actually happened on accident.
They killed the horse, I see.
No, they didn't kill the horse. I believe the horse was okay. It was injured, but it was okay. It says here it went to a farm upstate.
Wow.
So it's okay. No, it doesn't say that. But it does say that it was essentially the accident was bad enough that everyone was worried about litigation. But thankfully, because everyone had done correct paperwork and shit, everything was fine. There was no litigation. There was a bit of a suit, but again, because of paperwork, because everyone did the right paperwork, everything went by quickly and everyone was okay. The main problem that they have is because of budget constraints, they only had the one stunt guy, so it was like not really. It didn't go off as well as they wanted to, and yeah, essentially what happened was the car clipped the horse and injured the guy as well. So the horse was a little bit injured, but I think it recovered. It doesn't say the fate of the horse. I'm going to say the horse is okay. I mean, it doesn't say the horse was, like, severely injured. It says it was, like, a slight... It wasn't an injury to the horse, but it doesn't... If the horse was killed, it would have said so, I believe.
Alright.
Well, the way they're mentioning the story and talking about it, they would have said that the horse had died. But anyway, yeah, that's that's why you always do the proper paperwork, kids, and why you always strive to follow occupational health and safety rules.
But don't do your taxes.
That's why they're there, to prevent people from getting hurt. Not just dumb people, but like accidents. They're there to prevent accidents too. Anyway, what happens in the next episode, dear?
So some country dudes are near a fire, and they're just talking about stuff, and then we find out that Mike is okay, and at least not dead. He's really bloody, though.
Oh, that's good.
And then they're getting
weirdly.
Yeah. They get the TARDIS out of a hole, because it can't be destroyed, and then there's a whole bit about the assistant being like, men are spineless, and women are strong, and then the Master and Priest are now in their TARDIS, and power cycling so they can head out. The Doctor is going to put his TARDIS inside the Master's TARDIS so that they can go wherever he is. And Joe is coming with, and they're like, alright, let's get ready for takeoff. If we go too fast, we'll time ram. And be in the same space, and boom. And then whoosh, and then they whoosh away, and the fire dudes go, wow, fucking people from London. And then the two assistants and the brig are rushing their way into the college. Meanwhile, I actually realized it was Benton later. And then they come into land, and something appears in the TARDIS instead. It's his TARDIS. Let's turn the monitor on. Weird, where are we? It doesn't show anything. That's the time vortex. Let's walk into the Master's TARDIS, which leads into their TARDIS, which leads into the Master's TARDIS, and then What? What's
No.
going on?
The Doctor's TARDIS leads into the Master's TARDIS, but the Master's TARDIS leads into the Doctor's TARDIS.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope you remember this concept because it's not the last time it happens.
I don't care. Anyway, units pulling up at this point, and the Master is informed about it and uses the time slow down button on him. And then he sends his priest into the TARDIS, and the assistants show up with Benton pointing a gun. The Master fucking books it into his TARDIS, and they notice the TARDIS inside the TARDIS and calls in and goes, "Hey, what's up? Thanks for stopping by. I left some snacks." While the assistant wants to turn off the crystal time machine, Benton is upset he lost the Master, and he's not really sure, like, what to do with the time machine, because he was always told, like, don't touch the time machine, Benton. And
don't touch the time machine.
Yeah.
Benton.
And they can't turn the transmitter off, but they're stuck in the room, because if they try to leave, it'll go all slow time. So, actually, yeah, let's just switch it off. And they do, but the brig is still stuck. So, we find out that the Master put the TARDIS in a time lock, and also the Doctor put his TARDIS in a time lock, but the Master's like, I can fling you out into space, and the Doctor's like, I'm angry. You're not listening, so instead I'm gonna talk louder. And he does the thing so he can hear him, even though he's muted in the phone call. And then the assistants are working on the machine. It starts going crazy, thus killing Benton. Actually, he didn't die, he's a baby now. The Doctor calls in and
Baby
gets
Benton.
through his sound thing. So now he has to listen to him, but then the Master pushes the speak gibberish button, and the TARDISes are telepathic, apparently. So the Doctor's just like, I'm just gonna go out there. I know it's suicide, I'm just gonna go out there. And Joe's like, no, I don't want you to do that, it's scary. And then he meets the priest and Master when he goes outside. He's like, alright, I guess we can talk. And then the Master calls Kronos again to kill the Doctor. And Joe freaks out, and she's like, what the fuck happened to the Doctor? And he's like, Kronos swallowed him, he's in the time vortex now. And now I just get to decide what to do with you. Joan is like, just fucking kill me, I'm sad. And then the Master hits a button and does it. And that's the episode.
Mood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know I'm paraphrasing,
dies.
but that's actually kind of close to what Joe just is like, no, I'm sad, fuck this.
Well, yeah, she's kind of like, well, what's the fucking point? Like, I'm not going to be able to, like, travel back to I can't fucking control this, so thanks, just fucking kill me. Like, don't spew Shakespearean dialogue about how, evil you are. Just fucking kill me.
Yeah.
So, fun fact, you know how when John Pertwee and Katie Manning are driving in Bessie, and they have that weird side-mounted camera, which I recognized. I was like, they actually mounted a camera on the side. That's kind of impressive that they were able to do that in the 70s properly. So when they were doing that and they were like looking at the map and like trying to track things down, fun fact, they actually got lost.
Again.
Yes, they got lost again. By the time the two actors were finally able to make their way back to the director, he was already in the process of assembling search parties to track them down. Because they had gotten fucking lost that long. Whoops. So also another thing is that this is the first time we get to see a new redesign of the TARDIS. And they acknowledge it very quickly. It's like, wait, it looks different. Yep, it's a redesign. Move on. Fun fact, it's also the last time we see this redesign because they accidentally damage it and have to go with a new design next time they show the TARDIS properly. Oh well. Plus also it was kind of made fun of when it first came out. People were like, this looks so dumb and it looks so 70s.
It's an
in
egg
the
carton.
design of the... It kind of looks like an egg carton. It looks so 70s in the way they did the round dials of just like sticking out. Also, the backwards words that John Pertwee says in the bit, because it's very clearly reversed.
Yeah.
If you reverse that audio, don't bother, it's just gibberish. It it's not English at all. It's not a sentence. It's not any other language. It's just him speaking gibberish, which is kind of a shame because you could have done something really fun there for an outtake, but I mean, outtakes weren't really a thing then. It wouldn't be till I believe the 80s that they started really doing that sort of stuff and keeping outtakes and such. But it reminds you of sort of the scene in Human Nature with David Tennant where he's talking in a video recording, and there's a section where in the episode the video's sped up, so in the outtakes where they show the full video of him talking, he's like, and now I have to speak for approximately 2.5 minutes about anything at all, not stopping at all, not hesitating, just constantly talking, and then he just speaks about whatever's on his mind at that moment to keep talking. It's like, that would have been nice to have something like that where he's actually saying something and they just reverse the audio, but they didn't, and it's like, okay, whatever, it's the 70s, I get it, efficiency and outtakes weren't really a thing, whatever. What happened in the next episode, dear?
So Jo wakes up on the floor of the TARDIS, and the Doctor's whispering to her, like, and he's still in the time vortex, and Jo can't get him back, but the TARDIS can, so they tell her what to do, and he comes back. Meanwhile, in Atlantis, it's horn time! They're playing horns. Leader is here, and Pretty Lady with Booba is here too, in a carried chair. Also, the priest of Poseidon is the king. They want to make it rain because no one should starve anymore, but he's like, I can't fucking do that. What the fuck are you on about? Master needs to make sure that they know he's bringing back Kronos, but the lady and the cat stand up and go, I hear a weird thing. Then the master walks in and goes, I am the master, hello. I'd like to share with you Kronos, so come with me to talk. And the Doctor still hasn't repaired the TARDIS, so how can they go there? Well, it just can. And then they swoop into Atlantis, greeted by the priest and the guards, and the master says, your priest knows I control Kronos, and you should obey me too. And then afterwards he tries to hypnotize him, and the leader just like, haha, you're a fucking idiot. And then he won't give the master the crystal, but maybe one day. And then the master runs into the Doctor, and he's like, ugh! And then the Doctor and Jo go meet the leader as well, and Pretty Booba Lady is really enamored with the master and thinks he's godlike and wants to fuck her. Also, Jo is here and says, hi, I just came from far away, Queen. Would you treat me nicely? And she's like, yeah, put her in the guest bedroom. Give her a dress. Hell yeah. The servant calls the Queen a slut for a second and then sends another girl to talk to the master and say Kronos so that, like, he hears it. The Kronos crystal can't be destroyed. They've tried it. It's like the TARDIS, says leader. The master is brought to the Queen. And they're like, here, drink and talk with me. And he instantly calls her beautiful. And she's like, ooh. And then we see Jo in an Atlantis dress and wig. Matching wig. And then he's like, the king can stay king, but the power should be in your hands. And maybe a little bit in mine. And we have to talk to your priest to get the crystal. But there's also a guardian in there. We got to figure out how to do this and kill the king. I mean, not kill the king. There's a man in there that turned into this weird bull-like creature. It's literally the Minotaur. It's just the Minotaur. They're gonna make hippopotamus bring at them the crystal. So Jo goes down there to stop it and save everyone. So Jo's running to try and save the day, but is stopped by the priest and locked in the room with the Minotaur, and that's the episode.
Hippopotamus? I hear his rhymes are bottomless.
True.
Okay, there's a lot to talk about. So, first of all, one of the voices that are like the Doctor's subconscious thoughts is actually female, which is kind of a unintended, I guess, reference to the fact that the Doctor isn't restricted by male gender, even though he is for some like nearly 50 years after that point. But yeah, it's like, okay, I mean, back then in the 70s, they were at least attempting to sort of sow the seeds of like, hey, like, maybe he's not all the male.
And I say maybe.
Yep. So a notable. So the writer Robert Sloman, he had some inspiration come to him when he took a walk outside one day, and he heard an aeroplane flying overhead, and he was reminded of the sound of German bombers during the Second World War.
Yeah.
it's the 70s. From this experience came the idea of time slippages, and Sloman envisaged a fleet of World War I biplanes descending on a modern-day aircraft. As Sloman developed his narrative, he realized that budgetary constraints would prevent the First World War element from featuring prominently. Instead, it was decided to emphasize the Atlantis strand of the plot instead. So it was just like a one-off, sort of like, oh, it's a plane from World War I, and it's a bomb, watch out. So, another thing, I kind of jokingly said it, but I also kind of already knew the truth. When the Minotaur showed up, I jokingly said, oh my god, look, it's Darth Vader. That's because it actually is. It's David Prowse under there, in the Minotaur costume. Kind of. There's a weird thing about, like, stunt actors and him being under there and days conflicting on recording, but he was credited for it in the end, for being said Minotaur. But yes, David Prowse, most known for being the British man who was, well, British, snubbed from being the true Darth Vader in favor of James L. Jones's voice instead. But oh well. He got to play a Minotaur in this where you couldn't see his face either. Which, oh god, he really is the Mike Wazowski of film. Well, his face is never shown in fucking anything. Well, anything that he's mainly known for, or is remembered for. He's remembered for other things, but you know what I mean. Shut up. Also, fun fact, the writer was incredibly unimpressed with the realization of Kronos. He envisaged it as a shimmer and a vibration, but he then realized it like, oh, you guys just went with an actor flapping away on pulleys. I was like, oh, that happens a lot. Writers, unfortunately, not being able to see their vision come to light in a positive way. But anyway, what happens in the next episode, dear?
You mean the last episode?
Yep. It's also the next episode.
The Queen's hand goes and tells everyone that Joe is with the Minotaur, and they're like, fuck! Meanwhile, the Minotaur is mooing a lot and chasing her around. Joe's cornered, but an Atlantean fights him, and they have a wrestling match. Minotaur dies. Hippopotamus is dead, so that kind of sucks. But then they found the crystal. That's cool. Priest grabs the doctor and Joe and brings him to the master, and he says, hey, the king's alive still. And the queen is worried about the master, but the master wants her to be his servant, technically, and she's like, I am a queen. And she gets all pissy.
I am a queen.
Joe and the doctor are depressed, in jail. Everything feels pointless. The doctor recalls a story about depression and colorful rocks. Then the king gets thrown in there with them, and they're like, oh, you were alive. And he's like, Atlantis is going to be destroyed. Again. And then the queen, and then he, like, dies. He, like, actually dies. Then the queen has an announcement and mentions that the master is here to take over everything. He's going to bring forth Kronos, and everyone's like, and the doctor yells, he, like, the king's dead. The queen's like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, it happened earlier. And she's seizes the master, and he's like, nah, fuck that. Kronos, come here, help me. And it starts to attack everything while the master grabs a crystal and runs into his TARDIS with Joe attached to him because she attacked him. Doctor jumps into his TARDIS, follows. Kronos is still here. Everybody's dead. Like, actually, everybody's dead. The master's...
Well, the queen's just standing there, sort of like, oh god, what have I fucking done?
Yeah. You rule a land of corpses. Congratulations. And then the master is holding Joe captive, but is excited that he has the crystal and could take over everything. Doctor comes in and goes, hi, I'm here to help. I'll time ram you in order to save everyone, even though that'll kill us. And then the master's like, I'm going to call your bluff, and says, go ahead, do it. And he says, bye, Joe. Turns the dial up to 9 before stopping. And then the Joe and the asks the doctor to kill him anyway. But the doctor's like, there must be another way. And Joe's like, fuck it. And hits the switch and turns it up to 11. But then she wakes...
turns it up to sicko mode.
Yeah. Then she wakes up and everything's okay. And she walks outside and it's weird out here. And then goes over to the doctor's TARDIS, who's also right here, and finds him passed out. She's like, yeah, we're dead. And he's like, no, we're not. Come look outside. And then there's a giant face that comes up, and she goes, "Hi, Doctor, I know you. I'm Kronos. I'm a destroyer and a healer and a creator. I'm everything. What's up?" And she's like, "I'm gonna fucking kill that master of yours." And he's like, "No, please. I don't like women and in positions of power."
Like
and the doctor is like, "All right, I'll take him, please." And he's like, "Yeah, sure." And then he, like, shoves him away and runs into his TARDIS, and he's like, "Kronos, do something!" And she's like, "No, you wanted his freedom. There you fucking go." They get back. Benton is still a baby. The assistants are trying to fix the machine. "No one would condemn someone to death," says the doctor, "even someone who killed millions of people in Atlantis. That's just how we work." Oh well, time to go back to London, and they swoop in. The machine's running again, and pops, explodes. But that lets the brig move finally and come inside, and they're like, "Oh, you're finally here. Joe, why are you fucking dressed like that? Wait, where's Benton?" And Benton stands up, and he's naked! And then that's the laugh track. There you go. That's the episode.
So, two things, real quick. First one, influenced by Buddhist philosophies, Barry Letts, the producer, wanted to portray the Doctor as being only sort of semi-enlightened. He wanted him to be able to see the universe more clearly than most, but still possessing personal flaws, which he kind of reflected most in the tale the Doctor tells about the Hermit, and it's on his home planet, and also in the fact that, like, the Doctor has, you could call it a flaw, in that he is unwilling to sacrifice others to attain means. The means do not justify the ends do not justify the means for him. He is not willing to sacrifice others to get what he got. In old Doctor Who, in like 60s and arguably some of earlier episodes, that is bullshit. But it is more refined and begins a lot more here about, like, the sort of idea of the Doctor going, "Listen, I could blow us all up. I'll do it. I'll stop you." And the villain essentially going, "No, you won't." And he's like, "Yeah, no, I won't." That gets developed more and in a lot more interesting ways, especially in Genesis of the Daleks, which is arguably one of the most philosophical and sort of, it could have been controversial, but they play it off so well that it's actually one of the best episodes ever written, where about the Doctor's morality and about the morality of killing and suffering and committing heinous acts in order to prevent others from committing heinous acts. Okay, so that's that. The second thing I have to say, I'll let you choose, dear. Do you want to hear something funny about Baby Benton, or do you want to hear something incredibly depressing about Baby Benton?
Both.
What do you want first?
Funny.
Depressing first it is. Okay, so, according to John Levine, who played Benton, unfortunately, the baby that played Baby Benton, unfortunately didn't live to see his first birthday.
Cancer? Or...
They don't say, purely because it wasn't their baby, but they just know that the baby unfortunately died before its first birthday. Now, the funny thing is that is that when they were filming the ending scene, Benton, John Levine, was absolutely terrified that his nappy would fall off, because he was wearing the nappy still. They just don't show it in the show because it was kind of a bit obscene for them to show it in the 70s. He was absolutely fucking mortified that it would fall off and everyone would see his chunk. So, yeah, that's the time monster. Who was the time monster in the end, dear? Tell me.
Me. Because I wasted my time.
Oh, I get it. That's a weird joke. I don't think that's what Robert Sloman had in mind when he was writing this episode and titled it that. Fun fact for those of you who might have been really interested by the concept of Kronos and Chronovores, there is actually a sequel to this episode in book form called The Quantum Archangel, and of course Chronovores appear in some other things, mainly books, here and there. But yeah, if you're really interested in that sort of stuff. I recommend
Listen.
Quantum Archangel.
Listen.
It's a very odd book.
Kronos is the god of war, and I'm not going to hear anything else about this. And
I thought it was Kratos.
No, that's the god of war, you asshole. Haha, you already made this joke twice now.
Yeah, I know.
God of war!
Anyway, the Time Monster... Oh, Vor. I thought you said war.
No, the god of war. He ate all of his children.
So, what do you
3.
think, dear the Time Monster? Okay. Well, that's season 9. We're done with... We've finished 9 seasons of the show now, dear. How does it feel?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've kind of finished 9 seasons. We've cut out 15 episodes.
fucking done
because
yet?
they're missing. Oh, dear. There's 26 seasons.
I don't like sci-fi. I still don't like sci-fi. You've yet to change my opinion about science fiction.
Hey, I got 110 out of you so far, so...
Yes, you did,
I'm
but
happy.
that doesn't change my opinion about the entire fucking genre, nor this show.
Oh wait, it wasn't a 10, it was a 9, but I'm still happy with it. And hey, as we go on, the episodes get shorter, so... Yeah. That's right. After season 10 and season 11, we're restricted to 1 6-episode a season until, 5 seasons down the line. And all the 6-episode ones, bar arguably one of them, is a banger. Absolute banger of an episode. Plus also...
I'm leaving.
We've got a lot of eras to go through. We've got the end of John Pertwee's era.
I'm leaving.
We've got the beginning of Tom Baker, and then sort of what people tend to call the Golden Age.
Care.
The first Golden Age, and then we have the second Golden Age when
No
Douglas
one
Adams comes on
cares.
as script editor. But yeah, that's the Time Monster. Next episode, season 10. Wait a minute. That means it's 10 years of the show. How do we celebrate that, dear? That's right, with an episode called The 3 Doctors. What?
Oh my god, I don't care. Let me go to sleep.
See you next episode.
Fuck you.
Oh, don't say fuck you then, that's mean.